We got to talk about it. We got to talk about it. Y'all been tagging me in this video. Y'all be starting shit. I'm going to say that. Twitter, y'all that follow me on Twitter and YouTube, I be minding my black ass business. And y'all be tagging me and stuff, starting shit. So yeah, I got to talk about this now. I was going to talk about Epstein, but we'll talk about Epstein on my late night live tonight. I'm going to do it late. It's Friday night. I'm going to do a late night live around 10 o'clock Pacific time, maybe 10:30. We're going to do a late night live and talk about Epstein and T.I. and 50 Cent, and the Bohemian Grove list came out from attendees from 2023. We're going to talk about that later on and what all that means. And tomorrow on Patreon, we're going to read what all that means. Tomorrow on Patreon, we going into the cards of all this. But it's not on YouTube. We're going to talk about it from a straight up and down, non-spiritual way. Anyway, this topic is something that has been put to bed, and salute the Truth Savior. This was done on his channel. The Truth Savior. I'm going to put his channel right now in the chat. Go watch the whole video. I'm not going to review the whole video, but I will review the first part of the video. We're going to go over the first part of the video. But I'm not going to go through the whole video because I want you to watch his channel, because I think that Truth Savior did a really good job with some of his points that he made. Of course, I have different points, not because my points are superior, but because I'm a different person and I got my own brain the same way Truth Savior has his own brain. So we have some different points, but make something be very, very, very clear. If I have a point that's different than his point, it's just my opinion versus his opinion. I'm not trying to say I have the superior nothing, because I think that the brother did a good job on this interview. Let me see here. Check out. There we go. There we go. I just tagged Truth Savior in the description and put a copy of this video. Let me see here. Make sure I got it. Rocky, what you back there doing? Let me make sure I tagged the right video, because I almost tagged my own video. Here we go. All right, so yeah, I just put his channel and the video in my description, so I encourage you to go to his channel to watch the full video. But today we're gonna break down the first part. With that being said, welcome chat. I appreciate y'all for joining chat. Give me like 1 minute and we'll be right back. All right, let's go. Man, I was a little late. Cause my dad called me. My dad was like, cause you know how they did. My dad in the 70s now. His birthday was a couple days ago. My dad turned 73 a couple days ago. So yeah, you still gotta be tell the OGs how to work iTunes and Spotify and everything. And my dad called me. He was like, "Hey man, I was thinking about that song. Can you get it for me? Remember that Rick James and the Temptations?" I was like, "Standing on the Top?" He was like, "Yeah, that was my thing back in the day." I'm like, "Pops, Standing on the Top?" I was like, "Pops, that's what that's what you want me to download for you?" All right, I got you. I got you. My yeah, my dad. My dad is where I got a lot of my music history knowledge from. Just growing up with my dad. My dad would play everything, and yeah, man, I remember my dad. I'm 5 years old, 6 years old. My dad this back in the 80s when they didn't give a fuck. My dad be smoking a joint, that rice paper. Yeah, this be coming on. This be on. My dad be like, at South Park, you know what I mean? We was playing baseball, and them cats, and my dad would tell me old LA stories to the good old black music, you know what I mean? My dad be like, man, my dad be like, this should be on, and I'm gonna get to the topic in a few minutes. This should be on right here. My dad. Oh yeah, I remember when that shit came out. We was down there. We was going down there to Sportsman's Park, and we was low riding at Sportsman's Park, and we start at Sportsman's Park. Then we go down to Imperial and Crenshaw. That's how I be knowing all my other history. My dad, when I was 6, he be talking to his friends, and they be all passing the joint, and I'm sitting there right in the middle of them, and they talking about this shit on the radio. Hallelujah! They playing this shit. We like to party, baby. Oh yeah, this back when Sam had that 67 Lincoln. Yeah, he had that 67 Lincoln with them white walls. That's black culture. That's black culture. The nuances of black culture that oftentimes get lost through time. That's why if your elders, even if you got an uncle or somebody older than you sitting around, go have some conversations with them. Get that culture passed down. That's why when they came out and said low riding was Latino culture, I was like, what? I'm like, huh? I'm like, shit, I remember my dad, I remember this coming on to the radio and my dad telling me about his 71 Riviera. No, that's not Dr. Dre. That's Leon Haywood. My dad had his 71. He had his Riviera when this shit came out. I know was. I remember my dad telling me this shit going on. Oh, baby. My dad playing his Cadillac. That shit going on. That's how I knew about LA lowriding culture. I was 7 seeing all this shit unfurl right in front of my eyes, not knowing what I'm looking at. You know? What y'all know about this? Come on, people, do your dance to the rhythm. My dad was like, yeah, that came out in 77. That's... Cause my dad, he was one of his best friends, not best friends, but one of his childhood friends was Sam Watson. Y'all, if y'all ever see Al Heyman, Floyd Mayweather, any of those PBC fighters, you always see Sam Watson standing behind one of the fighters. That was one of my dad's childhood friends. He'd be like, yeah, I remember when that came out, man, Sam had a party down there in San Diego. But why am I bringing this up? This is all relevant to what we're talking about. Truth Savior did a really good job in this video talking about culture and tying culture into Black American music history. What you're about to see as we watch this video is this man tried to continue to disregard culture, and you're going to see him trying to rewrite history. So I want y'all to pay I'm only going to do the first 20 minutes of this video, 20 or so minutes of this video, because in this first, with the questions that he asked, he was able to establish something very important I want y'all to point out. And you're going to see this consistent pattern from this guy from the UK talking to Fat Joe to Dr. Cologne. You're going to see the same consistent pattern, and that's a disregard of black culture. So I want to break that down for you right now on this video. With that being said, again, welcome to the chat. Welcome to the chat. Because we're going to come and circle back around to the culture aspect, because the culture aspect is a major portion of the music history. And when people want to disregard the culture, that's because when you add the culture into the mix, they're not in it. So culture is always disregarded, because the people that want access to our cultural creations can't have access to our cultural creations if they acknowledge the culture. So hopefully True Savior won't strike me down for playing this video. Hopefully he don't. But we're gonna play some of this video right here, and we're gonna speed it up. Not because I want to just get through as much as I can. Okay. All right, let's go.
I objected to that on a number of positions, and I made a number of videos on it.
This is him talking about him objecting to. Let me go back a little bit further. I'm gonna play like a 2-minute stretch, and then we're gonna break it down.
Really known within the YouTube community, especially the jazz community, and I had the Marsalis family contact me. Jason Marsalis was on the channel, and in that I started to make the point that I didn't think that the title that jazz, when people say jazz is black music, I objected to that on a number of positions, and I made a number of videos on it. The most intelligent pushback I got was from Mr. Truth Savior here, and we've been going back and forth on this, but I have to say I'm a big fan of this channel, because there is a wealth of information here. And so our back and forth has got to the point where we thought, well, shall we just get together and argue this one out? Because a lot of my points come from, it's like a big question mark. It's a big question mark, because when we get back to that early history of jazz and blues, once we pass this sort of 1900 point, the actual information is very, very scarce. And I've really, really studied it and never found that sort of black band, you know, the Genesis.
Can y'all hear me? Can y'all? I know I was muted for a little bit, but can y'all hear the audio? Can y'all hear? Can y'all hear old dude? Okay, y'all can hear me? Okay. So let's go in. Let's go in, because that's what, let's go in. So I'm gonna play the audio. So y'all know how the dude looks. So let's just play the audio, all right?
Band that exists at the beginning. There seems to be white bands and black bands in New Orleans all the way through as this style slowly emerges. And I thought it's a bold statement to say that black people invented this form. Now, when I got into it, and I'm going to give you the sort of a...
I already said, he said it's a bold statement to say that black people invented this form of music. When did that become a bold statement?
The really powerful proof now, right at the top of this, so everyone can go away and have a think about it. I became very interested in the Jim Crow laws and how they emerged in 1895. And what a horrible... After the emancipation of the slaves in America in 1865, you saw America, I suppose white America, trying to pull back the power over the next 30 years. And it ends in a court case in 1895. Plessy Ferguson and Homer Plessy deliberately sat in a white carriage to create, very much like Rosa Parks, but with Rosa Parks it set off the civil movement. In this case they lost, and this brought the Jim Crow laws in. Homer Plessy took them to court, said, why can't I sit in the white carriage? You can't, because you're black. And so they then brought in the Jim Crow laws, and a whole bunch of musicians, including a whole bunch of black musicians, Creole musicians who had had a classical training, were then forced into the minstrel show, basically, and also the marching bands that were emerging. Now these
so he just said a whole lot. He said basically Plessy versus Ferguson in 1869. I'm sorry, 1896 is what, when the forced segregation is what black music comes from. I'm looking for a part in this book. There's a book called Segregating Sound. One thing about, let's go back to New Orleans. They always try to pick up New Orleans at that late after slavery. We got to understand, their neighborhoods in New Orleans were already segregated, okay? When slavery ended, black people considered as black, and people considered as Indian were forced into the same neighborhoods. And you also had people who were mulattoes and Melungeons, because America has very strict racial codes. What you're going to see as this video goes on is he's just going to totally disregard the codification of of racism in America. So what you see off top is he's trying to recodify what race is in America, and he's trying to do that from the UK. That's very rich. But let's keep going.
Folk bands that were emerging in the 1890s in America then had an influx of virtuosity. And I brought that right down to details. It was actually the Tio family, I think, who were like a family of clarinet players. Creole in origin, brought in sort of Italian clarinet technique. They taught people like Sidney Bechet. And suddenly, within this sort of American folk form, you have absolute genius musicians emerging.
So what he's trying to do is he's trying to narrow folk down to the 1890s. Folks, black people have folk music. I'm talking about free black people have folk music in the early 1800s, both in Georgia, from Georgia to Detroit. We had our own folk, because all folk music is basically acoustic music interpreting your environment. Folk music is music about your environment. It's music of the immediate environment of what you have going on, tales, stories. If Jim Bob robbed Jimbo at the corner store, that becomes a folk song because it's an interpretation of something that happened. So folk music is something that appears and even though you have your general old school folk songs, the concept of a folk song goes back to the concept of music. Folk song is an interpretation of your immediate environment and dues and things that happen like that. He's trying to say, okay, since Europeans have folk music and black people have folk music too, the black people must have got it from the Europeans. Let me see. Here it is on page 34, secular folk. Because I'm doing my bibliography right now for my book, and I just so happen to be on this section. And in this book, they're talking about folk music in the 1750s, dancing and drumming. Look at this. Let me read this passage right here. This is saying, it says 1739, Reverend George Whitefield complained that black folks were permitted to openly profane the Lord's Day with dancing, piping, and things like that. And such like is the exact words. In the same year, an insurrection at Stono in South Carolina, accompanied by singing, dancing, and beating drums with the intention of attracting, they use the word Africans, but these are black Americans, to join the rebellion. It's talking about the use of music right here in 1739 folk music to start rebellions. So we're at a whole century and a half before whatever the fuck he's talking about. That was secular folk music. And it's in here, let's talk about popular dance. In 1803, during the time of the Spanish government had to create ordinances of police for areas for black folks, people who were enslaved, to dance. That's in 1803. So it's like when it comes to the whole folk situation, right here, New Orleans, 1819. As wild as early as 1694, a black fiddler was playing and dancing in Virginia. Like, from Virginia to Georgia to Boston, there are stories of Black American folk music. Goes long before Louisiana. But one thing they do the same thing with jazz that they do with hip hop. How they try to narrow hip hop down to New York. They do this. That's why these people who are not Black American, they try to narrow jazz down to New Orleans. Although New Orleans was a spark, you saw jazz evolve and take different forms as it went north and got to Kansas City, St. Louis, Chicago, Detroit, New York. And each place that it went, LA, it took on a new form. And each time it took on a new form, it was a Black American musician creating and crafting that form. The jazz we hear now is not that shit that they was playing with King Oliver's Jazz Creole Band 100 years ago. No disrespect to King Oliver, because he was the man this time 110 years ago. But we ain't playing the same kind of music.
I would say Sidney Bechet, Jelly Roll Morton, and then Louis Armstrong, who is like the greatest musician of the 20th century and brings a sophistication to this music. Now, here's
another thing. He threw Jelly Roll Morton in there as the greatest musicians. Do y'all know, if we gonna tell the whole truth, and they do that because Jelly Roll Morton was Creole. He was Creole and he had a shag. So they like putting Jelly Roll Morton out there. But they always they never mention Willie the Lion Smith. They never mention James P. Johnson. These people, there was a story about Jelly Roll Morton having a battle with Willie the Lion in Harlem. And Willie the Lion smoked Jelly Roll so bad that Jelly Roll had to leave New York, and he ended up moving to LA, where he opened up a jazz lounge and a brothel on what's now Central and 11th Street. Go look it up. It is on the northwest corner. It's now an audio store. But that was once where Jelly Roll Morton brought the sound, but he came this way because he got renamed One Hand. Willie the Lion Smith started calling Jelly Roll Morton One Hand because he said, man, he can only play with one hand because he got smoked by the lion. And the lion was a cigar smoking, arrogant, tough ass nigga. And Willie the Lion Smith, it's a story about Willie the Lion Smith. He said the only person that could beat him in stride is James P. Johnson. Then he said, James P. Johnson could beat me in stride, but I'll beat him in a fight. This is it. This is where this is the story. I was over there a couple weeks ago, and I took this picture. I figured it'd come into good use. But this is when Jelly Roll Morton came to L.A. Downstairs was a jazz lounge. Upstairs was a brothel. He pimped upstairs during the day and played music downstairs by night. L.A. music history for your ass. And that's 100 years ago, folks. So people be thinking that, oh, LA ain't got no history. All right. All right, nigga. So let's keep going.
Nobody. I'm more mixed race than Homer Plessy. Homer Plessy, the black guy that sat on that carriage, was 1/8 black. right?
Right.
Was chosen because he looked white. He looked completely white. And then something that has always worried me, I looked at that picture of Buddy Bolden, the famous photo, and I thought that bloke in the front.
He's trying to say that what he's trying to do is he's trying to reclassify race. He's saying because Homer was 1/8 black, an octoroon, in other words, he by today's standards will be white. Sir, you cannot go by today's standards. The music was born out of an experience. And down there in southern Louisiana, it's a lot of people that even today, if you go by UK rules, they would look white. I showed y'all before, my family I put up a picture in this motherfucker the last time we was live about my family being mulatto Negroes. And because they were mulattoes, when it came time to pass down the plantation that the slave owning father, the state stepped in and said that these mulattoes can't get shit because they Negroes. So you got this white man from the UK that's trying to come and redefine American racial politics and hierarchy. That's how you know he's full of shit and he has no offer. He has nothing to say because he's full of shit. Now I want to get to when he starts talking about Buddy Bolden.
Walking around playing the trumpet loud, right? There's very little.
Or the big four.
He's something else. And then, as a drummer, you start to see, when you get into the history of jazz from a drum point of view, it's not contaminated with identity politics. So they just tell the history straight. And the thing that upsets me about this is that people go on about Buddy Bolden without a shred of evidence of him really doing anything except walking around playing the trumpet loud, right? There's very little.
I already just did. He tried to minimize Buddy Bolden. He said everyone gives Buddy Bolden credit, but all he did was play the trumpet loud. He just totally erased what Buddy Bolden is known for. The reason why Buddy Bolden gets credit, and True Savior, the host, did a great job of correcting him. True Savior said that no, it's the big four. The big four is what made Buddy Bolden popular. What is the big four? In 4/4 measure, it used to be in military, in marching band music, in minstrel music, and those sounds that come before, even ragtime. Ragtime, minstrel, folk, it was doom, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Buddy Bolden came with the big four. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hear that? That's the big four. That big four, that emphasis on rhythm, that re-emphasis on the offbeat is the precursor to the swing beat, which is a completely American beat, not African, not European. That's what you play on. That's what you play on the ride cymbal. He said he's a drummer. He should know this. That's how you know he's probably being purposely deceptive. Dun 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 da da da. But that comes from dun 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 dun, which changes the tenor and the texture of a song from 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. That's what Buddy Bolden's known for, and that's what they do. If you notice, that's the same thing that tethers do when it comes to Kool Herc. You tell them Kool Herc didn't create anything. James Brown created the breakbeat. Yeah, no, but James Brown didn't do the merry-go-round. So since Kool Herc did the merry-go-round, that makes him more important than James Brown. Hold on. James Brown was the first to extend the bridge out and make a song just a verse. He was the first to bust out and just loop a verse instead of having a chorus. He put the breakbeat in. He put it on a one and brought the funk. James Brown, he rapped. He had ciphers with his musicians, and he did all of this stuff. But oh yeah, no. Cool Herc. Do you see the common bond between the tether, the domestic tether, and the UK tether? It's the same thing. This black person did something that's monumental to the shift in music, and he's a drummer. He should understand the change in tenor and texture changes the texture of a song, the texture of the ride cymbal, whatever emphasis you put on the kick, whatever emphasis you put on the ride or the hi-hat, that determines the tempo and the way a song feels. That whole, I'm gonna give you an example from a more modern song, the Ozzy Brothers' "Footsteps in the Dark." What the hi-hat is doing, it changes the feel of the song. Just that has a completely different feel than had it been played straight ahead.
We're the people of the party here.
The way you texturize that beat, that swing, it changes the texture of a song. Where you place the hi-hat matters. Where you place the foot matters. Where you place the snare matters. Like you can go 4 on the floor, straight ahead. The circular hi-hat. It gives a song a certain texture. That's Steve Arrington on drums. Straight ahead gives a song a totally different texture than if you switch it over to this. Hear that difference in the snare? Dun, 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 dun. It makes you do one thing, but if I move that snare back some and make it on the offbeat, it changes the whole tenor and texture of a song. So Buddy Bolden's Big Four makes a much bigger difference than a straight ahead kick. Heard that? Doonts, 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 doonts. Oh, that's the Buddy Bolden stomp. That variation changed the music. And he tried to go all over it. But True Saver did a good job of correcting him right here.
Or the Big Four. It's supposed to be created the Big Four. I mean, that's what they say. That's what it's attributed to him.
I can't see a shred of evidence that he created the Big Four.
Well, there's no evidence to suggest that he didn't. But that's the standing evidence, right?
He already said, he said there's no evidence. He said there's no proof that Buddy Bolden created the Big Four. Although the person that he's trying to use as an example, Jelly Roll Morton, talked about Buddy Bolden's Big Four. And True Saver did a good job of saying, there's no truth. There's no evidence to say he didn't.
Being said, I think,
but listen to this. This is incredible, and this is what I mean, because I would love to come on here to champion the incredible black musicians that did do stuff which has been covered up. So of course, Buddy Bolden, he came out of the Charles Fambro.
So you see how you do it there. I want to play devil's advocate. Look, I could not refute that point, but let me point you in a different direction because I'm white and I say so. Listen to this part.
guy created it. I will say that's a black guy creating it. But you look in his band, and as far as I'm concerned, there's two white guys sat in that band.
Okay, let me just.
So my central point
you said a lot. So you said a lot. So I'm trying to remember everything that you spoke
what
about.
he was talking about in that part, it was a whole diatribe he went on, and he's trying to say, in one of the original bands, the Excelsior Brass Band. First off, he tried to say Excelsior Jazz Band, when really they're the Excelsior Brass Band, predating jazz. He's trying to say it was a couple white guys in it. Let me go back. I'm going to play that part.
Body drumming that African Americans did. He had the idea of applying that to the marching drums. So the marching drum units up until then, you needed 3 drummers to do a gig. Didi Chandler invents the bass drum in 1895.
He gives Didi Chandler credit.
And he starts to play this thing. And what was more incredible was he dazzled people with his coordination. He could play all these multiple rhythms at the same time, right? Now, there is that band, the John Roberts Show band, there is a photograph from 1897, so we're right before Buddy Bolden, and there's Didi Chandler playing that bass drum. And I think this is one of the points that we can point to, go, jazz starts there, and it's a black guy created it. I will say that's a black guy creating it. But you look in his band, and as far as I'm concerned, there's 2 white guys sat in that band.
Okay, let me just.
He said because in the Excelsior, in the band that Didi Chandler played in, there were 2 mulattoes in that band, and because there were 2 mulattoes in that band, he's trying to say, well, by the way I say it, because I'm white and I say so, by my estimation, it's 2 white guys when they're probably Creole. He's also trying to other the Creole thing, and True Savior's doing a good job of checking him othering that. I think in this whole interview, like a lot of y'all told me to review it, but I think True Savior did an excellent job. I really do. I think he did an excellent job. But you saw how the white guy said that, by my estimation, the guy from the UK, he's trying to redefine American politics 130 years ago by 2026 United Kingdom standards. Do y'all see what kind of asinine shit that is? When you study, here's the thing: when you study history and culture, that's the reason why in my book you're going to see a lot of talk about what was going on culturally, because time, context, and space can help do a better job of explaining the music. You don't understand the song "Fuck the Police" unless you understand the context and space of South Central LA in 1988. That song was abrasive to people across the world. As a matter of fact, I had a good phone conversation yesterday. Do y'all remember Kevin Slow Jam and James? Used to be on 92.3 The Beat. We talked yesterday on the phone. I'm gonna bring him on here and interview him. And he was talking about how he hated, when he was in DC, he hated that song, Fuck the Police. But then when he moved to LA, he understood exactly why Eazy-E, Ice Cube, and all of those guys in the NWA had to write that song. Because the song doesn't make sense unless you understand the time and place of this environment. So and also, you got to understand culture. The culture of Black resistance and the culture of Los Angeles and out of the Los Angeles Police Department post the Watts riots retooled. It backed off of us for about 5 or 6 years, from 66 to about 71, 72. Then about 73, 74, the LAPD started to retool and get more crash units and SWAT teams and these internal units that targeted Black people. But if you don't understand the culture of the LAPD, the culture of LA, the culture of Black American resistance, the song could sound like it's a bunch of jungle music. But that's why culture is so important. And that's why I think True Savior did a really good job of bringing this whole interview back to culture.
You said a lot. So you said a lot. So I'm trying to remember everything that you spoke about.
So my central point is that the Black musicians, even if I accepted what you say, and I don't, because there's white bands and Black bands, Papa Jack Lane, Excelsior, there's the 2 to really look into if you want to sort of research yourself. There were Black guys in Papa Jack Lane's band, and there were white guys in the Black band, to our standards of what is black and white, what we would classify as black and white. Of course, for me, being one of these sort of Martin Luther King colorblind type of white people, who thinks
he says he's a colorblind. Listen to this duplicitous bullshit right here. He said that he's offended that True Savior said Black American, that jazz is black. But at the same time, he said he's colorblind. If you're colorblind, why do you have an issue with True Savior's point of view? If you're colorblind, that's why colorblind is bullshit. Ain't nobody colorblind. We see exactly what it is. I know the difference between red and yellow, God damn it. I'm not colorblind.
You just shouldn't judge people on their skin color. And I know the counter argument.
Oh, we got True Savior up in here. Salute to True Savior, man. A great interview, brother. Great interview. Because True Savior got the white dude to say a whole lot and stumble over himself. And you allowed him to speak. And through True Savior allowing him to speak, you hear his duplicity come out. And this is why that duplicity is very important for us to know. You cannot expect straightforwardness from something that's duplicitous. And when you get to about the hour, an hour into the video, you hear True Savior talk about the guy talking about how, hey, you once said that jazz is black. Why did it change? That's what happens when you get somebody to talk. Make sure y'all watch. I got his video. I have his video tagged in the description. So if you want to find the full video from True Savior, it is tagged in the description of this video. Because I want, there's the reason I want y'all to watch it. Because you hear a lot of blabbing, a lot of double speak, and it's a lot of used car salesmanship going on in this. And I want y'all to pay attention to this guy and pay attention to how Fat Joe talks about hip hop. And see if listen to how Dr. Cologne talks about hip hop. You're getting all of these people who try to remove culture, and still you see the same pattern of behavior. And that's why you can't get mad, because you don't want these people to control your emotions. And True Savior did a really good job of being relaxed through the interview and not allowing this guy to control his emotions, because that's what they want. They want to hear you crash out and be like, hey, so look at what I got that dumb nigga to do. That's what they want. They want you to crash out. You can't give them that.
When you talk about jazz, it's pretty much the same thing. And what you didn't do in your Genesis to Jazz video, you sought information that supports a multiplication narrative. But as if you approach the topic,
yeah, I do a video with True Savior, without a doubt.
As if you were an ethnomusicologist, even if you didn't have audio, the ethnomusicologist would force you to look at the individual groups in order to determine where it could have come from. And in your latest video, the Genesis,
what he said right there is very important. He said an ethnomusicologist will force you to look at the culture in which a music comes from. That's not what he thinks. That's not what I think. That's just the standard of academia. That's just the standard of academia. That's how the culture has to get tied into everything. I told you, my minor was cultural anthropology. If we're talking about the history of food, you have to consider the culture of the people cooking the food. If we're talking about the history of fashion, you got to talk about the culture of the people creating the fashion. This goes up and down the line, the culture of business. And this is where black people always get messed up. When it comes to the culture of business, we don't really study Western European culture, because the culture of business is the culture of the rest of Western European. Go watch movies like The Boiler Room, Gordon Gekko, and what's that movie with Wall Street? It's competition, it's domination. Business is all about domination. They don't give a fuck about nothing you feel. And we come in thinking, oh, the job is all going to be good to me and I'm going to retire at 65. No, the culture of business is born out of Western European culture. You better study Western European culture if you want to understand capitalism. DeAndre Moses, they are trying to whitewash jazz creation. Excelsior brass band say as African with the bombola beat when it's Black American. Right. And what they do is they narrow the scope to these small little minute details because it's going to come apart. Let's get to this culture part, and then
jazz. I don't even think you even mentioned the word culture maybe once in the whole video, and so it was that you didn't even go there because I would go there in order to determine where this music originated. There's a reason that the
reason why you go there is because you understand that you're not trying to lie to nobody. That's the reason why True Savior will go there, because he's not trying to lie to nobody. If you're going to bring culture into it, that is showing, okay, this is what I said over here. Now let me show you the proof. Culture is like, you cannot understand a plant without understanding the soil. You can't, for people who do botany, whatever, horticulture, whatever the fuck they call that, you got to know what kind of soil to put different kind of plants in. You got to know what kind of climate it's supposed to be in. You got to know how much water it need. You got to know how much sun it need. You got to know all environment is understanding the soil, understanding the culture is like understanding the environment for a tree. Why does a redwood grow? Like they tried to bring in the late 1880s, they tried to bring redwoods to LA. But the redwoods couldn't really grow in LA because the redwoods depend on that damp all up along the coast. You get that fog, that morning dew. The redwoods drink the dew in the morning, and that's how they grow. And they need specific wind patterns. That climate doesn't exist in LA. So the redwoods that they tried to plant here, I think there's like only one left up in the San Fernando Valley somewhere. The redwoods couldn't stay here because the culture of the environment of LA wouldn't allow it. That's why you got to understand culture. If something doesn't fit within the culture, it can't survive. I wouldn't be able to, what's that? What's up, Nada 86, 97? I appreciate the super chat. 108 Train said there's a hard to get knocked off your square emotionally when your foundation is set in truth. Real talk. Real talk. But let's keep going.
Historians agree that jazz comes from the Black American experience because the real ethnomusicologists will look at the cultures of the people in order to determine where it's likely this music comes from. And without a shadow of a doubt, it comes from the Black American. Because here's what I know. You go out of your way to separate Creoles from whites and Creoles from blacks. Let's take, for example, the Freddie Hubbard orchestra with the Creole. What's it called?
That's a very important point. This goes back to what I said earlier. In order for this guy to make his point, he's trying to rewrite how American geopolitics. He's trying to rewrite the American social order. He's trying to separate Creoles. Like, no, the Creoles were forced into our category over here with us. You can't come along and now from the UK and say, hey, I'm from the UK. They look alike, so they're really more like me. No, the fuck they ain't.
The original Creole orchestra, Freddie Hubbard and original. Okay, you know what I'm talking about.
I know the one you mean, yeah.
Okay, now the name would suggest that all of those guys are Creole, but lo and behold, they're not. Because I did the research, they're not. A name should never fool you into thinking that's the identity of the group. Like for example, the what's the name of the group? Machito. I'm going in this area. Machito and the Afro-Cubans. You would think by the name, the guys in the group is Afro-Cuban, but no, they're Black American, Dominicans, and Puerto Ricans and Cubans in the group. The Funk Brothers from Motown. You would think maybe Funk Brothers.
That's a good point, and that goes. Do y'all see the parallels between this and the hip hop argument? Charlie Chase was there, so it was already. Kool Herc was there, so it's our culture. This guy's trying to say the same thing about white guys or Creoles being in an all-black band. See, here's one thing about music. One thing about music, especially Black American music, we are the least racist people. We allow, if you're good enough, now we're very judgmental. Are you good enough? And sometimes we'll lower the standards for a non-black person to get up in our stuff, but they still got to be good enough to play. If you're good enough to play and you with us, then you win. We don't really trip like that. The racism segregation thing was something that was put upon us, not something that we volunteered for. So yeah, throughout time, you will see other people in our music. Doesn't mean it's theirs. And that's why you got to connect it to culture. Because the music was born from these people's culture. You can study the culture and jump in all day. I was at a show the other day, and the saxophonist was a white dude at the Blue Note, and he's a cold motherfucker on that sax. Groups like Ellis, I appreciate Chris Ellis, I appreciate the super chat. Groups like Moonchild. Moonchild makes nice, really, I like Moonchild. They from here in LA. This is Moonchild right here. I can't front. Moonchild makes some really good music. They really do. But they're under no illusions the culture the music comes from. Salute to Amber. Amber cool as fuck. That's the woman with the red hair. I see Amber all the time. Amber cooler than a motherfucker. Moonchild, but it's not, you cannot get caught in the look. They're still making music that sounds like late 90s, quote unquote, neo soul. They're making music that sounds like 70s Mizell Brothers LA. Like he said, the Funk Brothers, Stax Records. What's his name just died? The guitarist from Stax. What's his name? Steve. What's his name? He just died this past December. Stax had a white guitar and bass, black organ and drums. It's still black music. That's why True Savior made a really good point with that. It's a couple white guys playing this. It's two white guys playing that. Still black music. Yeah, Steve Cropper. Yeah. Oh, you didn't listen to Moonchild? Yeah, Moonchild is dope. I can't look. Good music is good music.
Your ass comes up so clean, somebody.
Stuff like this with Robert Glasper. I don't want to get a strike playing too much music, but
if you're looking for an apology, please hang up now.
I think this bitch blocking me from her blessings.
That's Moonchild with Rhapsody and Jill Scott.
Stay, no, I'm not sorry.
The music ain't bad, but they still doing black music. I'm so glad True Savior made that point. But this guy doesn't respect black culture. That's what it comes down to. That's why he's fighting them so hard.
The Creole bands. You don't know if those guys are all Creole.
I know they weren't.
Well,
They're
okay.
white. The trouble is that someone white, as in our modern categorization, we would say they're white.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I once said, because when the only thing you ever did that upset me a little bit was when you did your first video, you said white British man says jazz is not black, and I messaged you and said, can you change that to mixed race British man? Now, my mom's born in Calcutta; she's Indian.
Mm-hmm.
I've got members of my family who are Indian. I've come from a multicultural family. I've got
Heard what he said. Did y'all? Let me slow that down. He talked about being hurt because when True Savior said what he said, we're basing this on American racial standards. This dude's coming from the UK. It's like one of my homegirls always said. They always have to insert themselves. This conversation about race and music in America ain't got nothing to do with the UK. But listen to this. I'm gonna slow it down.
The Creole bands. You don't know if those guys are all Creole.
I know they weren't.
Well,
they were white. The trouble is that someone white, as in our modern categorization, we would say they're white.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I once said, because when the only thing you ever did that upset me a little bit was when you did your first video, you said white British man says jazz is not black, and I messaged.
He said he was offended because True Savior said white British man. Hey, white British man, you're talking about American product. You have to understand that there's a whole nother culture over here in America. And it's not tied to UK culture. Different standards. And there are black Brits. There are Muslim Brits nowadays. So I get why Brother True Savior said that, because there are a lot of times in this tether talk, we've been dealing with tether so much lately, a lot of what we've been talking about has been dealing with black Brits. So of course he has to make that distinction. Because at the end of the day, you are in an American form. You're over here. You're not over there. You over here. And you getting offended. If you wasn't over here in our business over here, you wouldn't have no opportunity to be offended. Talk about British folk music all day, and you'll never have a black American offend you. But you can't. You want to jump in our culture like Fat Joe.
You and said, can you change that to mixed race British man? Now, my mom's born in Calcutta. She's Indian, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now, you see his offenses, he's making it about himself. Not about the topic, but about himself.
I've got members of my family who are Indian. I've come from a multicultural family. I've got people in my family that experience racism because they're brown, and I've got people who don't, right? And my mom, when she first came to the UK, experienced.
Ain't none of these people in America, though. He's talking about he got people in his family that experience brown because racism because they're brown. Okay, are they in Clarksdale, Mississippi in 1920? Do you got any family that was there? Huh? You got any family that was from Slidell, Louisiana in 1960? Lake Charles in 1840? Hell, South Central in 2026? The numbers show it ain't changed much since Jim Crow here in America, by the way. The numbers reflect that. The numbers reflect that anti-black violence here in Los Angeles, California has not changed much since Jim Crow, but that's a whole nother story.
It's the worst racism, right? And so I don't know. I've always commented, like, when you're from a mixed race background, you go, well, where do we fit? Where would we fit in
there? There we go. Just like Drake. Where do I fit? Why do they always come to black people trying to figure out where they fit? Come to white people. Shit. We don't make the rules. They always want to come to Black America saying, well, where do I fit? I don't know. Figure it out. I'll tell you where you don't fit. You don't fit trying to lessen my culture to prove your point, because you never pushed back on a True Savior when he said the Buddy Bolden Big Four is why Buddy Bolden was changed the sound. You didn't push back on that, other than saying, well, there's no evidence to suggest that. What? So all those black musicians of the time, them talking about him changing the syncopation, none of that. Okay. I don't know where you fit in, Andy Edwards, but you don't fit in here. You just because you like the music don't mean I don't know what to tell you. Like, you'll get a much better answer by going to the white half of your family and asking them. That's probably where you'll get a better answer. Is that not the same thing that people say about hip hop? Well, you know, man, I grew up listening to my moms play that music, play that salsa music and merengue and calypso, and I didn't like it, man. But the hip hop, man, it was just something about hip hop. How many times do you hear that? It's something about hip hop. It's something about, and then so I found fitting in. This is my culture. And we'd be like, all right, you can come to the party, whatever. I ain't tripping. You can do what you want to do, whatever. Then 30 years later, oh no, Kool Herc started this. This is Jamaican and Puerto Rican culture, and fuck James Brown. That's how it happens every time. Do y'all not see the consistencies? This is why I was on this stuff back when I was in college. When I was studying jazz history in college, I was in the early 2000s like, hold on. A lot of this sound exactly like what's going on now with hip hop. The same stuff I hear on MTV about hip hop is the same thing they were saying about bebop in 1956. That was the same thing they were saying about swing in 1926. That's the same thing they were saying about stride in 1916. That's the same thing they were saying about ragtime in 1906. You got like, also when I'm learning this shit, this history, I'm like, damn, this is a lot like what we going through now. Because I'm 18, 19, and my experience is the same thing I'm reading about in history class about the experience of the generation that brought in bebop. But that's something you pick up when you're part of the culture. And that's why culture means so much. Go to this part here. I'm only gonna play a couple more clips, and then we're gonna keep going.
And you'll go, well, hang on, they're British black people. It's not the same as being an American black person. And I found that fascinating that happened. My mate Sean has been in between it. He's white, but he sort of was adopted by a black family, grew up, his wife's black, his kids are black. Mm-hmm. Now he had to go to court because a group of black lefty types accused him of racism for posting a Martin Luther King speech in his workplace in the chat. And it was so strange that him saying, well, we're all the same, you know, that we should treat people all the same. And he got in trouble for posting an article about the fact that the worst off group of people in the United Kingdom are white teenage boys.
Okay.
And so I know because I know of your age, right? You're more like me. And when I said, is that a...
So he's complaining about somebody that got in trouble for posting some bullshit. Again, not understanding the racial dynamics here in America. Let's get past that part. I want to get to this.
Americans. Now, that's upsetting to you because I seem to be downplaying the black, the black part of jazz.
Because you're not looking at culture, and that's why it's important. Like let me give you an example. Now, Could you tell me what is the Creole and the European musical contributions to the creation of jazz? Like, for example, if
That's
I say,
a great question. What is their musical contribution? You can ask the same thing when it comes to these tellers. What is Kool Herc's musical contribution to hip hop?
say that it's well established, now this is not me talking, that ragtime and the blues and spiritual music is foundational to jazz. Without those elements, there is no jazz. So what I'm asking you to do is tell me what are the musical elements of the European and this right, the Creole categorization is kills me because it's not a race or nothing like that, but you make it
Creole is not a racial category.
You make it like it's a separate thing. So I'm going to ask you.
I think this is a confusion. I am saying that these were the categories. These are the idiotic categories upon which Jim Crow was based. So in New Orleans, you had white people who were classified as black. They can't vote, blah, blah. Now they come out their front door and they go mix with the white people because nobody knows. Mm-hmm. They might have said culture, but in the end, it was how brown you were, unless they start to look at
This is where he messes up. He said that, remember early in the video, he takes his start date to jazz. He tried to go to the Excelsior Brass Band. He tried to rename them Jazz Band when they were a brass band, not jazz. But if you go with his timeline with D.D. Chandler in 1896, Black people could still vote in New Orleans in 1896. Black people didn't lose the privilege to vote until 1898. So, what are you talking about? See, this is what happens when you don't understand the intricacies and nuances of a culture and a country. You only know a little bit that you read. You ain't got no stories passed down through your family. My family was in Southern Louisiana during this time. His wasn't. Listen to this part again.
You had white people who were classified as black. They can't vote, blah, blah. Now they come out their front door and they go mix with the white people because nobody knows. Mm-hmm. They might have said culture, but in the end, it was how brown you were, unless they start to look at certificates. And they had the one drop rule, one drop of black genes in.
He said it came down to how brown you were. Bullshit. My great-granddaddy was light bright, damn near white. Mr. Mouton Smith. I got a lot of light bright. The Smiths and the Hoggets. They're probably the same skin complexion of him. But they saw them nigga noses and they saw them nigga textures and said, get your nigga ass on over there with the niggas. Now, you can probably get the better of the black folk people on the ranking of jobs available to black people. Your lighter skin gives you a better job than the darker one. But they're very clear. No, you go over there. These are Negroes. They're very keenly aware of race, especially in Louisiana, man. Keenly. They didn't want black blood in their genes. That's why segregation and everything was so big. They were acutely aware of race. And if anybody passed and got through, they asses got lynched and killed. The price of passing during that time was death. Did some people get away with passing? Of course, a few did. Did that happen in large numbers? No, because the penalty was death. And not by a fair trial. Again, somebody not considering the cultural context of America.
There, and you're black. Now, I don't think that's right. And so there were white people in those bands. It was mixed up. And all these
white people in what bands? And white people
in the black bands.
What bands? What bands in particular are you talking about?
Excelsior band. You can see them in the photographs.
No.
They weren't white. He's trying to make the Creole guy white.
Well, here's my point. Again,
He's literally, he tried to redefine what Creole is, what mulatto is. Now he says, since I'm white and I say so, and I'm going to reclassify these Creole people as white, now I'm going to say that there are white people in the band. That's what they're trying to do with hip hop. Well, hip hop was created 50-50 with Jamaicans and Puerto Ricans. See, Puerto Rican, see that Charlie Chase? He was there earlier. We're now in 2070. Puerto Ricans are now classified as white. So by today's standards, Charlie Chase being there breakdancing in the early days of hip hop proves that hip hop is white because Charlie Chase is white. He even had white on his driver's license. That's how people like him are going to try to do in 20 years. Hell, they're trying to do it now. Low key, but in 20 years, 30 years, yeah. Well, if you look at Charlie Chase's, if you look at, and I don't mean to pick on Charlie Chase because Charlie Chase is one that admitted that Black American music is, that hip hop is Black American. So I don't want to pick on him. But if you go to, what's that dude that I don't like? Crazy Legs. Let's use him because I like Charlie Chase is a good guy. Well, look at Crazy Legs. And Crazy Legs look white. By today's standards, he be white. And Crazy Legs was there dancing, breakdancing, and he was dancing just as good as the black guys. You see Crazy Legs in these movies? His driver's license, he identifies as white. It's easy for them to do this if we don't say vigilant.
again, you have to look at. I'm going to ask you that question again before I go into that. What did the white European, in terms of music, not terms of instruments, not in terms of technique.
Why not? Why not?
Because that's not a musical element.
It is.
No. I'm talking about music, not
if you're playing the clarinet, right?
Okay.
You see how he's not trying to answer his question. He said in terms of music, not instruments, and it's a very good reason. I'm glad he said not instruments because the saxophone was created by Europeans. 1859. Adolph Sax created this. Excuse me. Adolph Sax, appreciate the super chat, James, I appreciate the super chat. Adolph Sax created the saxophone. The saxophone was a dormant instrument. It was a dormant instrument. It was an instrument that big bands didn't use. But it was Coleman Hawkins that picked up the saxophone and made the saxophone a thing. That's why I'm glad our brother brought up, made a great distinction, because it was Coleman Hawkins. When it comes to the saxophone, he made the saxophone an instrument that people wanted to play. The instrument had been around for well over 50 years, 60 years. No one used it. You cannot find traces of people using the saxophone outside of it being a complementary music in instrument in orchestras. And most orchestras, classical music, rejected the saxophone. Then Coleman Hawkins picked it up. Then Coleman Hawkins dropped Body and Soul. And after Body and Soul by Coleman Hawkins, the way the saxophone was perceived was changed forever. If you want to know what brought the saxophone into mainstream, and then Charlie Parker took that alto sax and he came with that bebop. That's trumpet. That was Dizzy Gillespie on trumpet. But I couldn't get to Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker came with that. And then, to complete the trifecta, the person that brought the cool to the saxophone was Lester Young. He made it cool. Not only did he make the saxophone cool, he created the term cool. Lester Young used to play with the saxophone tilted to the side. You know what I mean? Lester Young used to play it off to the side. Lester Young started out as a drummer. And the reason why he switched to saxophone was because he said the ladies was leaving the club too soon. And he couldn't talk to the ladies when he was packing up his drums. So mid-career, he switched to the saxophone. You see how I play off to the side? That's the prez. That's the prez. That's the person that came up with the term cool. That's the person that came up with the term cheddar. Bread for money. He came up with the term crib for house. That's why, going back to what True Savior said, you got to understand the culture. You got to understand the culture. The bebop, because bebop wasn't just playing, it was also a style. It was also words. Words like cool. That's how you got Lester Young. Look, Lester Young was a player, boy. He was Marvin Gaye before Marvin Gaye. You dig? That was Lester Young.
Where is from?
Who was it? Who?
If you notice, this dude could not answer the question. He could not answer the question. He skated around it and dancing. And that's why I'm going to stop here. I'm going to stop here on the video. Because he did all he needed to do. Ask the right questions. The guy couldn't answer them. So he just tried to do what they all do. Take the conversation to the mud and wallow in the mud. Change definitions of things based on convenience. Straw arguments. Things like that. And then, later on, they talk about call and answer later on. And that's one thing I'm clearing up in my book. Whenever they come to black music, they always try to limit, they limit our music to whatever they can tie to Africa. Always remember that. They limit the aspects of our music to whatever they can tie to Africa or Europe. They tie instruments to Europe, and they can tie call and response to Africa. Every song ain't call and response. As a matter of fact, comping in jazz is more prominent than call and response. Not this one. Comping when I play something and then you comp and play along with it. You're complimenting what I'm doing. Let me see if I can find some comping. Where is it? No, that's not it. Let me see here. I didn't have a song in mind. Let me see here. Let me see if I can see it. Here we go. Let me see. There we go. Let's go here. Popular song like So What? You hear as Miles is playing his trumpet solo and Coltrane is playing a saxophone solo, you hear the piano in the background sort of just playing things to complement what's going on. Hear the piano, just little things to float the sound along. Horace Silver was great at comping. Horace Silver comped a lot in his music. Let me see if I can find a piece. See, the issue is I can only play 10 seconds of a song without getting a strike. Senior Blues. You'll hear in parts of Senior Blues, you'll hear Horace Silver was really good at using that left hand on the low side, and he'll play these little grunts underneath the sound. Comping, that's the part that they leave out. They leave out the song structure, that's American. They leave out the bridges, the choruses, the AABA format that is the blues. Blues has a format and how the songs are structured. They leave out the instrumentation that we created or repurposed to fit our sound. They leave out so much and they get you stuck on call and response. They leave everything out that makes it the essence that it is, and they'll narrow it down to European instrument, call and response. Okay, the jazz, the pianos, they're definitely central to jazz, but you can have jazz without piano. You can have drum set, acoustic guitar, and bass, and be fine. Happens all the time in trios, where the guitar can play the chords. And the type of guitar that's used is created right here in the United States of America. You could have electric guitar, electric bass, and drum set and be totally fine. All American instruments. Not to minimize the impact of the piano. What I'm saying is, if you don't have a piano, the show still goes on. And the core, real talk, the core component of jazz is right here. Improvisation. When it gets to Louis Armstrong was heavy on the improv, the creating the music on the spot with no formal training. And in the video, the guy tries to talk about, okay, it's European because, these guys, he tried to say that the reason what makes Louis Armstrong and the non-trained black musicians, he tries to say that, oh no, that's the minstrels. They made it into minstrel music. No, black Americans were doing music like Blind Tom Wiggins. He was never formally trained, but he still composed 7,000 songs. Could play 3 songs. He could play 3 different songs at once on different pianos. One song with his left hand, a different song with his right hand, and sing the melody to a third song. But I encourage y'all to go through. I don't want to play too much True Savior's video. He did a great job. I encourage y'all to go back and watch that video. And yeah. But jazz is definitely American. These people are crazy. They don't know the fuck they talking about. And we're going to have a late night live tonight. We're going to do a late night live tonight. I'm going to get in talking about the whole T.I. situation. We're going to talk about Epstein, what's going on with Epstein. And we're going to talk about what's this Bohemian Grove shit that's going on that they just exposed. And tomorrow we're going to read some cards. All right. Again, salute the True Savior. Go to subscribe to his channel, watch his channel. And this is his breakdown and all that good stuff, all right? Because it gets way deeper, but I didn't want to go all the way through his video. I want y'all to watch this video yourself, all right? And if you're on Patreon, do you have any questions that if you go watch this whole video, you want me to break down any particular parts in further detail, those of you on Patreon, hit me up. I can make a Patreon show about that, all right? Make sure y'all have a good one. We out.